buddy, put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Live around the world on the internet at MichaelDukesShow.com and across the state of Alaska on this your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Hello, good morning. How are you? Are you ready? Man, I was having the perfect dream. And then rudeness. How rude is that, man? Good morning and welcome to the program. It is the Michael Dukes Show, and it is the Tuesday edition of the big radio show. First Truth Tuesday in, a couple weeks. And not only is it's Truth Tuesday. There's going to be some pain. You know it's going to happen. On top of that, it's tax day. It's just perfect. It's the perfect conjunction of everything. Tax day and everything else. We got a full boat today. Brad Keithley from Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets is waiting in the wings, fully rested and full of Irish blarney. Very full of Irish Brad. He's been a wee to Ireland and he's come back and he's going to tell us all about it. It's going to be fun. And then in hour two, we've got somebody from Americans for Prosperity to come into us to talk us about tax day and some free eggs or something. It's going to be. And then we're going to finish up with Chris Story. It's the only way we could survive. Because then he's going to sue this with the thing and the deal. But we are getting some good news from Brad, so don't think it's not going to happen. Don't think it's not going to happen today. All right, it's a day, man. Let's get to it. Let's get going on. Don't put it off. You got to eat your broccoli. You might as well get it done first before you get to the desserting part. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, brings us the truth every Tuesday, and we start off right here. Hello, my friend. How are you, Brad?
Well, Michael, I'm doing great. I'm not quite sure what time zone I'm in. I'm trying to readjust back from Ireland, but I'm doing great.
You're in the best time zone, my friend. This is the Alaska time. I don't know where you are, but it doesn't matter. We're doing great. We're ready to go. All right. So the weekly top three, we've got some good stuff. We're saving that for the end. Number three, we're going to talk about a little bit about your trip to Ireland and all the fun stuff. We'll have a mini top three inside the top three. But before we get to that, let's, I hate to do it, but we've got to talk about it. There's been a lot that's gone on over the last couple weeks while you've been gone, and there's going to be a lot more coming up in the next 2 weeks. I mean, we have seen some chicanery. We've seen some deceptions and some fifth dimensional chess moves and, Friday night, late night, things and everything else. But this balanced budget thing that we keep talking about, I mean, they keep using that word, but I don't think it means what they think it means. Give me the rundown here. The number one is the balanced budget that they keep talking about. Is it really, Brad? Is it really?
Well, Michael, it's funny. Over the 2 weeks, I'm not sure anything's changed all that much. When I left, we were talking about the budget that was in House Finance. When I come back, we're talking about the budget that's just barely made it out of House Finance and onto the floor. So I got rested over the 2 weeks. I'm not sure about anybody else. So we're going to hear a lot this week and next, and maybe the week following that, maybe the week following that, maybe into a special session. We're going to hear a lot of talk about a balanced budget and achieving a balanced budget. That is the goal of everybody, to achieve a balanced budget. And there's what I want to talk about is there's really two balances. When you talk about fiscal policy, there's two balanced budgets. One is an accounting balance where revenues equal spending or spending equal revenues, where you have an accounting balance across the top. But there's also, when fiscal policy experts talk about a balanced budget, they're also talking about a distributionally balanced budget. That is, that the contributions toward the budget and the distributions out of the budget are roughly equal, that no one bracket, income bracket, or no one industry or no one segment of the population of industry is taking a bigger hit than any other. They're all contributing in a fashion that is distributionally balanced. What we're going to hear over the next couple of weeks or 3 weeks, is we're going to hear a lot of talk about accounting balance. We're going to hear a lot of talk about, at the top level, spending equaling revenues, or revenues equaling spending. And I'm not sure they're even going to achieve that. If you look at the numbers that are in the House Finance version, if you look at the numbers that are being talked about on the floor, if you look at the amendments that are on the floor thus far, we have more amendments to go. But if you look at the amendments on the floor, I'm not sure, and also at the same time look at where FY26 revenues are going with the oil price slide, I'm not sure that we're even going to achieve an accounting balanced budget. People talk about, dipping into the CBR to balance this year's budget because we're having a slide in revenues and there's been additional spending added on top in terms of the supplementals. And now people are talking about dipping into the CBR to balance next year's budget, the FY26 budget, because of the slide, ostensibly because of the slide in oil revenues. It's a combination of being unable to control spending and the slide in revenues. But we're going to have a lot of discussion about that accounting balance, and I suspect that the majority in the House and the majority in the Senate are going to claim victory if they come close to that accounting balance, spending equaling revenues. But that's not the only balance that's important. When fiscal policy people talk about balanced budgets, they're also talking about distributionally balanced, and we have already given up on that. The amendment Friday night to significantly cut the PFD below the statutory levels and transfer that difference, the cut, to the general fund, essentially tax middle and lower income Alaska families and transfer that difference to the general fund, virtually ensures that there's not going to be distributional balance. Everybody talks about they don't say they're talking about distributional balance, but everybody talks about distributional balance. When the oil industry says, "Oh, you can't increase revenues from us because it will affect our industry," they're talking about distributional balance. They're talking about, you can't take more from us because it will affect our business and it will cause us to have adverse consequences in our business. That's a discussion about distributional balance. When people say, "Oh, you can't have taxes, you can't have sales taxes or income taxes because that would take from Alaska families," separate and apart from the fact that PFD is taking from Alaska families, the PFD cuts are taking from Alaska families, they're talking about distributional balance. And so I think it would be useful if we sort of fessed up in this discussion that we're going to have and admit that we're talking about distributional balance and focus on distributional balance as an issue. When the oil companies say they can't afford anymore, dig into that. Can the oil companies afford more? They can. And we've talked to you on the show a lot about the economics of the oil industry. We've talked on the show about the revenue take from the oil industry, and they can't afford more. When we talk about sales taxes and income taxes, we're talking about really a distributional balance affecting Alaska families. But we're also talking about a distributional affecting non-residents. We don't take from non-residents currently. Non-residents get off, as Governor Hammond put it at one point, scot-free. They don't have to contribute to the cost of government in Alaska, unlike in the 49 other states and the District of Columbia. Non-residents in Alaska, tourists, non-resident employees, don't have to contribute to the costs of government. And the result of that is to shift the share they would otherwise pay over to residents, increase the burden on residents of Alaska. So we would gain a lot, I think, if we would just confront the fact that we're talking about distributional balance when we're talking about these issues, and try to develop a budget and work to develop a budget and set as a goal of a budget that not only is accounting balance in the sense that revenues equal spending, but also in terms of distributional balance, that we're spreading the burden of who pays for the costs of government in a balanced manner across all categories, including industry, including oil, including non-residents, and including residents. And within residents, looking at finding a way to distribute the burden that we're going to shift to Alaska families, finding a way to shift that burden in a way that's balanced across Alaska families, as opposed to the way we're doing it now with PFD cuts, pushing that burden almost entirely onto middle and lower income Alaska families and letting the top 20% escape from sharing any of the costs of that burden. So as we have this discussion over the next 2 weeks, and as people in the legislature talk about, oh, we got to achieve a balanced budget, it's in two ways. It's in one is an accounting balance across from spending and revenues to spending and revenues equal out. But also it's distributional balance. Are we developing a budget that is distributionally balanced, that takes from all categories in a balanced fashion, and make sure everyone is contributing in a way that is balanced across the whole spectrum? And right now we don't have it. I would love to give a reward to the first person who would go on the House floor, on the Senate floor, and talk about a distributionally balanced budget, because I think it would elevate the discussion in a huge way from where we've been.
Well, good luck with that. I mean, we watched Nellie Jimmy's speech about this impassioned speech about the people and how they're affected and everything else, by PFD cuts, and how it drives her people into poverty and all this other kind of stuff. Really tearful. And then and at the end she was like, and to save you, I'm going to cut the PFD. Wait, you just spent 5 minutes telling us why this was horrible for people, and now you're going to, I mean, it makes no sense, Brad. That
was a great opportunity to talk about distributional balance. That was a great opportunity to say, look, you're taking it out of my constituents, you're taking it out of middle and lower income Alaska families. In my district, you're taking it out of subsistence, you're taking it out of elders. It's a great opportunity to say, and we need to finish that off by saying, and we need balance across all categories of Alaska industry and people in contributing to this budget. Great opportunity. She set it up perfectly to do that. And then she just gave up on it. I mean, she backed off and said, "Oh no, we've got to spend instead of focusing on balance." It was a great setup. I mean, absolutely great setup.
It was a great. I mean, it was completely bipolar at some point. You're like, all these bad things about taking the PFD, and to save you, I have to take the PFD. I mean, it is the prime example of, we know better than you how to spend your money.
Yeah, it's a combination. What's going on? The Senate or the House majority rather sold their soul to Chuck Kopp, to get Chuck Kopp to come over and give them a 1-vote majority. What Kopp insisted on was no taxes on the oil companies, and no personal taxes in the form of income or sales taxes. And that's what's gone on. And Kopp has. There was a press conference a couple of weeks ago. It's all blurring in my mind, but where Kopp said something to the effect of, I would have joined the minority. I would have made the minority a majority if they just would have agreed to a balanced budget. And what he meant by that was the accounting balanced budget. He certainly didn't mean the distributionally balanced budget.
Right.
But I joined the majority. I joined the current majority. I joined Bryce and the others because they promised me, he didn't say this, But if you read between the lines and look at his votes and look at the votes along the way, because they promised me that they would not tax oil companies and they would not tax, they would not have a personal tax other than PFD cuts. And so what they got, what the majority got, was COP's vote to spend, but they gave up any effort, any votes to get distributional balance. Nellie Jimmy should have, she should have called a spade and said, look, this is what's going on. We need distributional balance. This is why we need distributional balance. This is who's being affected by having distributional imbalance. And this is the consequences of distributional imbalance. We need to have distributional balance. And I urge my colleagues to work on distributional balance. But she didn't. She adhered to the party line that Bryce and COP had set up.
Well, even Neil Foster didn't talk about this, even though he voted against it. It's the same kind. I mean, again, I'm not holding my breath because I don't think they're going to talk about that. They don't, because it would take away their ability to spend. That's the whole thing. This is a symptom of the politician's disease. And if we did talk about some of those distributional things, again, without that spending cap, they're just going to spend it anyway. So it's kind of where we're at right now. Final thoughts on this, Brad. We got a break here.
Well, they're going to spend it anyway, but at least the cost of it would be distributionally more balanced than what we have it now. At least the top 20%, at least the oil companies, at least the non-residents would contribute to the cost, and that would reduce the burden on Alaska families. Having the oil companies contribute more, having non-residents contribut more, would reduce the burden on Alaska families.
They want to talk about it. They don't care about distributionally. They don't care about it, but they want to talk about it. That press conference that you're referring to, where COP told that, which by the way turns out may not have been true. I mean, I'm just, he said he had a conversation, but turns out that may not have been true. Was the same one where Josephson said the quiet part out loud.
But we don't yet live in a world where the Alaska people are ready for themselves to invest in their state government.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they do. I mean, that's the fallacy of all this. They do through PFD cuts. We're reducing the income of middle and lower income Alaska families to
you and I know
spending.
You and I know that, but see, they're not treating it like that. See, this is they're saying the quiet part out loud. We need people to invest in their own state. Remember I said, what did I tell you? You guys need to pay your fair share. That's what he's saying there. You guys need to pay your way. And this is where we're at right now. All right, Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. The weekly top 3 continues at number 2 in just a moment. We'll be back with more. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Dukes Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, and the weekly top 3. Brad, this is pie in the sky, baby. I mean, you're talking about these people actually wanting to talk about distributional fairness between, who's paying and everything else. It's all about protecting, who they're protecting. And most importantly, because they would throw their top 20% donors under the bus in a hot second if they thought they could get away with it, just so that they could protect their spend. That's what this all is all about, right? I mean, this is already what this is all about.
Yeah, I understand that, Michael. But here, keep this in mind. If we had distributional balance, if we had the oil companies paying what they're supposed to pay under the Constitution, if we had the top 20% contributing, if we had non-residents contributing, we might spend more, but the share of that and the burden on Alaska families would be less because of the contribution coming from non-residents, because of which is about 15% of revenues, could be about 15% of revenues, because of the contribution coming from non-residents, because of the contribution coming from the oil companies, because of the contribution coming from other industries. We might be spending more, but the burden on Alaska families, which is what we really should be focused on, would be less because we have these contributions coming from from the other segments. So it's we need to keep in mind, we need to keep the focus on what Alaska families are paying, as opposed to what the overall spend is. The overall spend is important, but even more important is what the burden is that you're shifting to Alaska families.
Well, and again, my fear is, and I mean, I see what you're saying. I understand what you're saying intellectually, but my fear is, if we did get more oil taxes and we did start taxing outside interests, tourists and out of state employees, et cetera, they already know what they're willing to take from us. So they would just expand it to what we were already paying before and take all that additional money and spend it. This is the danger. And while I'm happy to talk about, we need to talk about the taxes and the different types of taxation, my fear has always been, is that spending will expand to consume all the available money.
But think of but also think about what you're picking up. All of a sudden, you're picking up the oil companies pushing back on spending because they're having to pay a share of the increased spending. You're picking up the top 20% pushing back on spending because they're having to pay a share of the spending. You're picking up the non-resident industries, tourism and fish, pushing back on spending because they're having to pay a share of the spending. So the dynamics are shifting. Yes, you may have a slight increase in the overall spend, but you're picking up a lot of opposition to that overall spend by allocating a portion of it to the additional segments, and you're collapsing or you're reducing the share that Alaska families have to contribute because you're bringing in contributions from non-residents, from the oil companies, from other industries.
And you're right. I just don't know if the pressure is great enough to hold down the spending. And that's the biggest part of the problem. Rob Myers says, investing implies we're happy with our return. Well, but I mean, some people are. We saw that meeting in Anchorage. I mean, tax me harder, daddy. Right? I mean, that's what they want. There's a group in there that's like, just tax it, give it all to the government. They know better than us how to spend that money. So there's a whole group out there that believe that. And of course now, like I said, with them saying the quiet part out loud, we're on the verge, Brad. I mean, do you think we're going to see taxes, right? I mean, I think we're in agreement. We're going to see taxes in one form or another. Now that people like Josephson and others are saying that more and more, that's not the first time it's been mentioned in the last 8 months. And I think it's just going to continue. I think that's the new refrain.
Yeah. But the focus, I mean, as we enter that era, we need to keep the focus on distributional balance to make sure that the beneficiaries of the contributions to make sure that the additional segments can contribute to that spending, and make sure that the share being borne by Alaska families is at least held constant, if not reduced, as a result of the additional shares coming in from other segments.
Well, like I said, I'm not going to hold my breath because that's how you suffocate. That's how it happens right there. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. The weekly top 3 continues. Let's get back to it. Here we go.
The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Huh. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
Not your daddy. Tax me harder, daddy. That's what they're asking for all day, all night. Tax me harder. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, the weekly top 3. I'm looking forward to number 3. Number 2. I'm looking forward to number 3. I mean, while Brad was gone, apparently hell froze over because Joe Pascovan wrote an opinion piece that Brad Keithley actually agrees with, which is unusual. I know there's been a little bit of a tete-a-tete there between Brad and Joe on this. Joe wrote a piece talking about the permanent fund and the earnings reserve and the principle of the fund and everything else. And my golly, you guys actually agree on something, Brad.
Yeah, I'm not sure I've ever agreed with Joe before. I mean, usually Joe's op-eds are about oil taxes, and while you and I talk about that there's a justification and a need for additional oil taxes, Joe sort of goes to the extreme of that, and I think goes beyond what's a balanced approach with respect to the oil companies. But this op-ed was on something different. This op-ed was on the Permanent Fund Corporation's proposal that's currently before the legislature to combine the earnings reserve and the permanent fund corpus. We've talked about it on the show before. I oppose it because, to me, it's opening a back door. Well, to a lot of people, it's opening a back door into the corpus. It allows the permanent fund corporation to take a 5% draw, even if they're not earning a 5% draw. And that additional amount beyond what they're earning, between what they're earning and the 5% draw, would come from the corpus. And this proposed constitutional amendment opens that door and allows them to do it. There's also some other incentive issues with that. The Permanent Fund Corporation really wouldn't care anymore about its performance because it's going to generate 5% with this consolidation. It's going to generate 5%. Regardless of what it does. If it produces a 1% return, 2% return, 3% return, they're still going to take 5% by drawing the additional amount out of the corpus. Somewhat to my surprise, Paskvan in an op-ed in the Fairbanks News Miner agrees with that. This is what he said: the proposed constitutional change converts the current two-component system to a single component system. The 5% POMV would be withdrawn from this single component system. Because because that amount becomes spendable, the permanent fund could be spent down to nothing. The word permanent is gone. Risks to maintaining safety of principle arise. Consider this question, and I think this is a perfect setup for it. If the 5% withdrawal rate for the current POMV is a factor in fully depleting the ERA, that is, the ERA is being depleted because we're taking 5%, even though the Permanent Fund Corporation isn't generating a 5% return. Isn't it obvious that if constitutional protection of the principle is removed, a 5% withdrawal rate from the single component permanent fund can and will deplete the principle? The answer is yes, of course. Removing constitutional protection of the principle destroys safety of principle. Permanent becomes impermanent. And Joe's got that issue exactly right. What we're doing with this proposed constitutional amendment that's currently before the legislature, that's being pushed by the Permanent Fund Corporation, the current Permanent Fund Corporation, is opening a back door into the principle and allowing the Permanent Fund Corporation and the legislature to get in and take from the principle whenever it needs it to make up the difference between what the Permanent Fund Corporation is actually earning and 5%. Here's the fundamental problem that's going on, that's causing this issue. The Permanent Fund Corporation is not earning what it should. 5% isn't a bad standard in terms of withdrawal, but the Permanent Fund Corporation has become so risk averse, so protective in its investment policy that it isn't earning the 5%. If you look at the S&P, if you look at other standards of earnings, they're all well in excess of the 5%. The Permanent Fund Corporation, which manages the permanent fund, has become so tied up in its efforts to become risk averse that it's reduced the earnings of the Permanent Fund on the Alaska Permanent Fund below that 5% standard. That's the problem. The problem is the way in which the Permanent Fund Corporation is managing its investments. The problem is they aren't earning enough on the investments. Secondary to that, they're spending a hell of a lot of money not to earn very much. I mean, they're spending almost 1% of the annual earnings on management fees and consultants fees to advise them on how to do this complicated investment approach. So they're not only not earning 5% on return, they're reducing what they are earning by 1% to pay all of the management and consulting fees. That's the problem. And they're trying to get out of their rather than address that problem, rather than address the fact that they're not earning what they should, they're not pursuing investment policies that they should, and rather than address the problem that they're spending way the heck too much in order to produce those inadequate returns. Rather than address those fundamental issues, they're trying to backdoor it by saying, well, if we don't produce 5%, we'll just go into the principal. We'll just open this back door into the principal and keep giving you a 5% return over time. We need instead of this constitutional amendment, instead of consolidating the two accounts, instead of opening this back door into the permanent fund principal, the legislature needs to focus on the core of the problem, which is the permanent fund corporation is not producing the type of returns it should, and it's spending way the heck too much to produce those inadequate returns. We need focus on the permanent fund corporation and on its performance, rather than permitting the state to open this back door so that they can begin to drain the permanent fund corpus when they don't have the type of returns they should.
That it's the next step, right? I mean, this is the next logical step, because they don't, they're gonna in their whole appetite for spend, the next logical step is access to the corpus, because it kicks a can down the road, prevents them from having to talk more about taxes. And this is why the Republicans will get on board with this, because they don't want cuts. Willie Keppel just mentioned that, again, there was an amendment yesterday to remove 6 positions that haven't been filled in 2 or 3 years, and it failed on a party line vote. It would have saved $1 million, and they said no. Cuts, we all know that cuts would work. But again, that's just more proof right there that we're never going to get there at this rate with a group of people we have down there now, because they're not going to cut anything. It's too easy to gather more revenue, to steal from the PFD, to combine the PFD and go to the corpus. This is the direction they're going.
Yeah, you and I have talked on the show probably since the mid 2010s about where do they go next after they drain the SBR, the CBR. And once they started into the permanent fund dividend, where do they go next? And the question was whether they go to taxes, or the question was whether they go to the permanent fund corpus. And what this is doing, what SJR 14, I think it is doing, is opening the door to the permanent fund corpus to allow them to start taking from the permanent fund corpus, even though the permanent fund is generating less in earnings than what they're taking out. So it's a bad policy that they're wrapping up as, it's necessary to make the permanent fund permanent. It's not. It's necessary. What they're doing is trying to make the permanent fund impermanent by allowing them to have a backdoor into the corpus. And Joe Paskovan has it exactly right. If SJR 14 gets out of the legislature, it's going to have to be voted on by the people, because it's a constitutional amendment to the constitutional provisions that currently set up the 2-account system for the permanent fund. And it's going to be interesting. I hope it doesn't get out of the legislature. I hope that they don't get the super majorities that are required to pass the constitutional amendment out of the legislature. I hope the Senate Republicans, for one group, stand up against it. I hope the House minority stands up against it, calling it what it is, a raid on the permanent fund. But if it gets out of the legislature, it's going to go for a popular vote. And it's going to be interesting to see the division between those who, are lining up to raid the permanent fund to keep the spend going, to keep the revenues going, as opposed to those who really do want to keep the permanent fund permanent.
Yeah. No, it's the next step. It's the next logical step in their progression to basically consume everything in sight. That's essentially what it comes down to. All right, Brad, we're up to the end here of this segment. Any final thoughts before we move on to more happy times?
Yeah, I guess the one thought is, this is not a partisan issue. This is, do you understand do you understand numbers issue? Do you understand what's going on and what they're trying to do issue? It's not a Democrat issue. I mean, Paskovan's proving it's not a Democrat issue, Republican issue. It's, do you understand numbers, and do you understand the effect of SJ14 issue? And that's encouraging that it's not a partisan issue. But then you start to wonder about how many of the legislators really do understand accounting. So it's the important point, I think, out of this is it's not a partisan issue. It's a are we going to protect the permanent fund or not issue?
Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. The weekly top three continues. This time, though, we're going to get a mini top three or so from his return. He just got back from Ireland. We're going to talk about that. A little bit of happier times. We'll continue. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio.
What is that?
Common sense. Regularly heard on American radio. Michael Duke Show. Radio.
Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, the weekly top three. Rob says, here's his prediction. SGR 14 might pass the Senate, but it won't pass the House. I mean, I just cannot even fathom why somebody in the Senate who's ostensibly a fiscal conservative would look at this and think, well, that's a good idea. This is a good idea. I can't even understand. But I mean, what Willie was talking about yesterday, that amendment to remove 6 positions that haven't been filled in 2 years, is part of our problem for some people who are saying we should just focus on the cuts. I agree. That would be the ultimate way to fix the problem that we have, is to just focus on the cuts. The problem is we bring up a simple line to remove 6 positions to cut just $1 million. $1 million, that's pocket change. $1 million. That's it. Out of a $6 billion budget, $1 million, and they voted down. Yep. There is no, we have to acknowledge that at some point, tilting at windmills does nothing but break your lance and hurt your horse, right? I mean, that's where we're at right now.
And as they continue to spend without having a distributionally balanced approach, as they continue to spend it, it's all coming out of the PFD. They're taking it out of the permanent fund dividend. They're taking it out of the pockets of middle and lower income Alaska families. So it's got to be. I mean, I think the incentives change. I think if we have distributional balance, if the oil companies have to contribute more, responding to increased spending, if the top 20% have to contribute, if the non-resident industries, tourism and fish and others have to contribute to respond to additional spending, I think the dynamics change. I think the incentives change. I think the pushback on spending starts to have an effect. But right now, there's not that effect. I mean, right now it's okay. We're going to spend a little bit more. It's going to come out of the PFD. They haven't, we managed to take it out of their pockets before. We'll just take a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. We'll take it down to 1,000. We'll tell them that's good, even though 1,000 is like 87.13. The split between the POMV split at $1,000 is 87.13. Then we'll take it down to 900. Then we'll take it down to 800. That's what's going on. We have to broaden the base that's pushing back. We have to change the incentives to broaden the base that's pushing back. And if we do that, if we have a distributional balance, we reduce the burden on Alaska families by having a significant share of the burden borne by non-residents, an increased share of the burden borne by the oil companies. And I think that has the effect of improving life for middle and lower income Alaska families, and it has the effect of increasing the pushback on spending.
Frank asked the question. This is the $1 million question. How do we change the mindset in the legislature then? It's a great question, Frank. I wish I knew. I mean, we've been talking about it for 10, 12 years now on this program with Brad. How do we change the mindset in the legislature? I don't know. I mean, we had legislators on the program where we'd ask them back in the late mid-2010s, will you follow the ICER example where they said you couldn't spend over $3.9 billion? And they said yes. And then it was $4 billion. And they said yes. And then it was $4.1 billion. And they said yes. And what do? They just keep blowing past it. I don't know, Frank. I wish I had the answer. The answer is yes, we need a mindset of trimming government. The problem is nobody in there's doing it. And the few that are trying to do it and the holdouts, they're, holding against the tide. That's all they're doing. again, this is like one of those all-consuming things that just sucks up everything in the room, and you could scream and shout and wave your hands all you want, and it's still coming for you, baby. That's what's happening right now. How do we fix it? I don't know. Maybe we let the whole thing go, just blow apart. I have no idea at this point.
Well, one of the ways to fix it is to have a governor who will stand up. I mean, Dunleavy has essentially checked out. He's been checked out for maybe the last 6 years, but Dunleavy's essentially checked out. He doesn't get involved in the discussions about revenue. We've got a revenue commissioner, Adam Crum, who's on vacation in Hawaii during the session. We've got an administration who's just checked out, and so you're leaving the power in the hands of Bryce Edgman and others, Gary Stevens in the legislature, who are developing these policies without the governor's involvement or governor taking a lead, or the governor's vetoes. At one point, you may remember this conversation way the heck back in 2019. At one point, we said, "Look, the governor ought to just veto the entire budget. If you're not going to preserve the permanent fund dividend, veto the entire budget, start over again." But he didn't do that, and he's not taken positions along the way that have helped address the problem.
Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, the weekly top 3. Number 3. This will be better. This will be better. We're going to talk about fun stuff. That's up next. The Michael Duke Show. Like, share, subscribe, ring the bell. Let's do it. Here we go.
Public enema number 1. Oh, wait, sorry. Public enemy number 1, which makes more sense. On the other hand, he's a little bit of a pain in the Michael Duke Show.
All right, we're continuing now. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, the weekly top 3. We're on to number 3. We're trying something a little bit different because, we knew it was going to be painful, but now we want to do something a little more fun. Brad just spent 2 weeks over in Ireland. He was a groupie for a Celtic band thing. He just basically followed him around like the Grateful Dead, only it was the Celtic version of that. Of course, I'm sure everybody's first question is, did you run into Rosie O'Donnell while you were in Ireland?
I did not.
I'm sure that's the first question that everybody's asking. But you got some top 3 moments for while you're over there. You said you've been over there several times, and this was still the best. Give us a rundown, man. Give us your itinerary. What happened?
Well, this is an old Michael Duke's Finer Things segment. One of my favorite things that you ever did was your Finer Things program that talked about the things that places to eat, places to go, places to see, places to stay.
Right.
So this is a Michael Duke's Finer Things segment. I've been to Ireland a lot over my life, and I've done it several different ways. Sometimes I've gone over and I've just rented a car and driven myself around. Basically, I've sort of set the agenda by where bands that I want to hear are playing, and I've just sort of wandered around the country, going from music festival to music festival in the summers. That's one way I've done it. Another way I've done it is to go on various tours that are set up as musical tours, and they kick off, and every night there's music and somebody comes in and plays. You have a tour guide, you have a tour director who is a musician themselves. They arrange for other musicians, Irish musicians, to come in and play, and you get music every night. And then during the day, you sort of tour the country, you see castles, and you see different things about Ireland. This one was different. This tour was different in this respect. The tour guide, the tour director, was Karen Casey, who, for those who follow Irish music, was one of the original members of the band Solace back in the 1990s. A great Irish musician Irish singer who's gone on and done several things. But Karen is interested not only in the music, but she's also interested in the history. She's dug into the history of Ireland. And one of the things that I've missed about either A, doing it by myself, or B, doing it through the music tours, has been digging into the history. I'm really fascinated, particularly by the early 1900s segment of Irish history. Easter Rising of 1916, the Civil War, or the War of Independence from 1919 to 1921, and then the Civil War that followed the War of Independence, which it was Irishmen against Irishmen. And I've never quite understood that. But this tour was great because Karen not only is a great singer, not only a great musician, and not only did she bring in musicians on the tour, but we also had 3 or 4 academic quality graduate lectures on Irish history, particularly on the Irish history of the early 1900s. To understand that, you had to dig into, you had to go back in Irish history quite a ways, and these lectures did. And some of the tour was visiting these various locations that were important to Irish history. But to me, the great thing about it was we combined the music and the culture with this sort of focus on the history. That's not for everybody. Some people want to focus on different things. But my point is that there is really, if you look for it and you spend enough time researching it, you're going to find a tour for whatever it is you want to do, what you want to learn about Ireland. If you want music all the time, there's tours for that. If you want just to go around from castle to castle, there's tours for that. If you want to go around from city to city, from shopping center to shopping center, there's tours for that. But what this really brought home to me is if you dig deep enough and if you follow enough, if you understand what people are trying to accomplish enough, you can find a tour that really hits all of your buttons. And that's what this tour did for me. Great country, great people, great music. This was as much a foodie tour as it was a music tour, because Ireland also has great food these days. You have to dig a little bit to find it, but it also has great food, great views, great geological things to do and things to see. But at the core, you can find a tour that does whatever it is you want. So when Terry finally, prevails on you, Michael.
It's not that I don't want to go to Ireland, man. It's not that I don't want to go there. I'm curious about because the food thing is definitely part of Finer Things. For those of you who don't know, was a podcast that I did. I think there's still 12 or 14 episodes up on iTunes or wherever it's at. You can go back and listen to it. It was one of my kind of my passion projects that I ran out of time and money to do, where we went around to various areas in Alaska and the Pacific Northwest, and we visited them and interviewed different people and talked about how did they get started. And it was fun. It was really enjoyable. I too enjoy the history of how people get started and things like that. But, Ireland would definitely be bucket list stuff for that. You talk about food. What was, I don't know if I think of traditional Irish fare, my wife does, we do the corned beef, obviously, and the shortbread and, all the things, the hot cross buns, those kind of things. But what was the things that stuck out to you in, what is traditional Irish fare in your mind?
So Ireland is an island, right? And there's a huge amount of fishing that goes on from Ireland. And so the seafood was frankly spectacular. It is every bit the equal. I may get in trouble for this, but it is every bit the equal of the seafood that we have in Alaska. I love Alaska seafood, and I eat a lot of seafood. But the Irish seafood was every bit the equal of that. So you had some great seafood restaurants. Ireland typically was the breadbasket, the beef breadbasket for England. One piece of history: the Irish famine in the 1850s was a famine was the failure of the potato crop, which is what the Irish people relied on. But they were growing a lot of beef. They were growing a lot of other vegetables for export to Great Britain. And the famine was not because Ireland didn't have food. They did. It's just that the English kept taking the food that was traditionally exported to them, and the crop that the food source that the Irish relied on, the potatoes, failed, and that's what triggered the famine. But Irish beef has always been a favorite of mine. I've got a couple of steakhouses in the country that I always go to whenever I'm over there, and the Irish beef was good. And lamb, So you think about Ireland, and a lot of the country is sheep. I mean, a lot of wool. They generate a lot of wool, but as a consequence of that, you have a lot of lamb. And so lamb is also a wonderful dish over there. And you can find restaurants that have a selection of the three, of seafood, beef and lamb, or you can find restaurants that focus on one of those. Great potato dishes, other vegetables, but it's those big three: seafood because it's a big fishing country, beef because that's historically what they've done a lot of, and lamb.
I love me a good mutton dish. I'll tell you, it's not often that we get a chance to have that around here anymore. But that's good stuff. Where do you recommend starting off in Ireland? Is there a good primer? Is there a good starting thing before we got 2 minutes here?
Well, you have to just look up Irish tours and start digging down through that. Or if you have a favorite Irish performer, a favorite Irish singer, see if they lead a tour and start trying to dig into that. Ireland's basically, there's 4 different parts. There's the south, which is centered around Cork. There's the west, which is centered around Galway. There's the east, which is centered around Dublin. And there's the north, which is more or less centered around Belfast, although there's still, the division between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland in the north. But there's 4 different regions. They generally, emphasize different things. There's a lot more history, particularly around the early 1900s, the period that I've been focused on. There's a lot more history around Cork than there is perhaps elsewhere in the country. But you just start digging in. I mean, there's Wild Atlantic Way tours is one. There's Inish Free music tours is another. And just start with those, and then just start digging in from there. Or you can go on your own, but have some focus when you're doing that. Say you're going to go to Galway, and you're going to go to Cork, and you're going to go to Dublin.
Right.
Say you're going to follow a certain musician around.
All right. Well, I'm looking forward. I mean, you know me, I would have to do the whiskey, the Jamesons, the Irish whiskey tour as well.
Yep.
On top of all that, it'd be an amazing time. All right. Well, Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, the weekly top 3. I feel pretty good now. Feel better. Feel better when it's all said and done.
Until you go in and Terry says, when are we going?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. That'll be the next question. So when's the time? All right, we'll be back with more. The Michael Duke Show continues. Hour 2 dead ahead. Be kind, love one another, live well. Rob says, Cork seems too wooden to me. Oh, dad joke. Okay. Well, Brad, like you said, you left and it was a mess, and you came back and it was a mess. We could go away for 5 years and come back, and it would still be, I mean, this is what happens every time when at the end of the year, when I go on vacation, I come back and everything's still there. All the problems still there. All the things still there. I mean, going back to Frank's question, how do we change the mindset of the legislature? I don't know. I mean, at this point, I used to think we could change the players and that would do it. We could change. I just don't even know, man. I just don't even know.
That's a question. I'm sure you put it to him, but that's a question for Rob Myers. I mean, that's a question for somebody who's inside dealing with these issues, albeit in the Senate minority, but inside dealing with these issues and trying to figure out, how you make your way through the morass that's the legislature to get something that makes more sense. I'm not. We've been doing this for however long we've been doing it. We've never solved it. So I think that's a question for somebody who's on the inside trying to deal with these issues.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I just, I know that a lot of these people, I'm sure that they believe. I don't ascribe like evil to everybody, or anything. I know some people are like that feel that way. I think that these people think that in their heart of hearts they're doing the right thing, but I just don't see how, in the big picture, they can continue to think that what they're doing is sustainable and will work out in the end, especially based on the history of what's happened so far. You can't keep doing the same thing that you've been doing for the past 30 years and expect that it's going to turn out differently.
Yeah, and one of the problems, and again, I think Rob would be a much better commentator on this than I am. But one of the things that strikes me as I look at this stuff is it's always just get me through this session. I'll be better next session, but just get me through this session. Or in the case of Gary Stevens, just get me to retirement. And if I need to raid the permanent fund, that'll be fine. It'll get me through the end of the session. It's just there's not an overarching long-term view, and that's where the governor comes in. I mean, the governor is elected, in my view, to have that overarching long-term view, to have that plan, to have that
vision.
Thank you. That vision that we're working toward. And I'm sure Governor Dunleavy has a vision. I'm just not sure what it is, and I'm not sure it's relevant to what's going on in the legislature. So to me, that is where the process could be helped a lot by having a governor with a consistent vision who is going to step in the battles and fight those battles.
I think the first step would be to have a governor that doesn't have larger aspirations, right? I mean, it would be interesting to have a governor who'd be like, I'm willing to just do one term. If I'm only here for one term, that's fine. I'll make as big a mess as I can to try and solve the problems. As you said, I mean, the governor could have vetoed the whole budget. When it was up against it, he could have vetoed the whole budget. He could have taken a strong stand. And Dunleavy's checked out. He got called out by James Kaufman, of all people, the other day for not engaging and not being part of the whole thing, just like not being there. And whether he's planning on running for Senate or what, I don't know what he's planning on, but you just can't. He has an inordinate amount of power in all the states. The governor of Alaska is one of the strongest executive positions in the entire country, and yet he has done virtually nothing other than propose some real mealy mouth budgets and everything else. It's frustrating to watch.
He's absolutely done nothing. I mean, the budget this year proves that. The budget this year showed deficits, showed running out of the constitutional budget reserve, draining the constitutional budget reserve about 4 years in, and nothing but red numbers from there on out. And that's what he submitted. The statute says you have to submit a balanced budget. He didn't. He just ignored it and kept on going. So he's absolutely done nothing in terms of providing vision for where this state ought to be going. One could say, or Bill Walker would probably say in his defense, he was that governor who stepped in and agreed to do and made the hard decisions in that one term. Problem is Walker made the wrong decisions. Problem is Walker ultimately took the easy road out and took the PFD because that's where the political forces, the top 20%, the oil companies and the non-resident industries wanted to take it from, because that protected them. So you have to have a governor who's not only willing to get in the battle, but you have to have a governor whose heart is in the right place in terms of fighting these battles. And maybe that's asking more than's out there, but we'll keep looking. But that's part of where this starts. Having a leader, having a governor who will drive these issues home, who will veto when necessary and send them back to the drawing board when necessary. That's I think, a big part of where this starts.
Well, and Frank points out the problem with this mindset. He says, so if I'm correct, if you get the ideal governor, you could have some real change for 4 years, as much as 8 years. Then what? It goes back to the same old. Potentially, yes, but also there's an impetus to government. They have a momentum. So if you're heading in one direction, it's much harder to pull it from that direction than it is to just keep it going. So we would hope that, with something like that, that it would move forward. Go ahead, Brad. Quick.
Yeah. If you look at Trump, I don't think we go back to the same old after Trump. I don't think there is a same old to go back to. Everything's going to be, we're going to be in 52. It's going to be a game of 52 pickup, and somebody's going to have to sort of put some of Humpty Dumpty back together again. But I don't think you go back to the same old. So if you have a governor who does that sort of thing, I think we break the mold and go forward with the new mold.
I would agree. I think if we change the direction of the momentum, that is what we do. All right. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, the weekly top 3 next week. Maybe we should include a positive segment every week in the saying.
I'll just have to travel more to do that.
Travel
Michael.
more. That's your mandate. Thank you, Brad. Appreciate you coming on board.
Thank you,
Folks,
Michael.
we're out of time. We got to go. Hour 2 is dead ahead. The Michael Duke Show.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Live around the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com and across the state of Alaska on this your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the program. How are you doing? Are you ready to go? Hour 2 of this beautiful Tuesday. We just finished up with Brad Keithley from Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets in the weekly top 3. Which was kind of nice because we ended up the top 3 talking about his travels in Ireland and kind of a fun little blip at the end of the last segment where we got a chance to think about happier thoughts, going out and visiting and doing things and everything else. But I need to go back. I hate to do it, but I'm going to drag us back to the first couple segments where we talked about this idea of a balanced budget, equitable distribution of the pain, so to speak, and this idea of taking the permanent fund and everything else. And there's something thematic in all that we talked about in hour 1. And that is that, again, Parkinson's principles for government is running strong. And for those of you who don't know what Parkinson's principle, it's basically, it's that old adage that that no matter how many hours you have, work expands to fill the whole. The Parkinson's for government is no matter how much money you have, government spending will expand to basically consume every available dollar. And that's kind of where we're at right now. It's one of the reasons why Brad and I have always been at odds over the idea. I believe we need to talk about taxes, but I don't want taxes, right? Because I believe that if we had some form of taxation, that the spending would just fill up. I mean, Brad's argument that a distribution equitability between the participants, meaning the private sector has their share, the out-of-staters have their share through tourism and employees, and the oil companies pay their share, that somehow that outward pressure would cause the size of the costs on residents to shrink, I think is wishful thinking. I really do. I think it's wishful thinking. I think what would happen is if the legislature realizes that the citizenry and the residents are willing to pay, X amount, let's just say the amount is X, and we add these additional taxes or some form of taxation on the oil companies and the out-of-staters and everything else, and that cuts that would cut the contribution by the residents down to 50% of X, just to pick a random number. What would happen is within a very short period of time, the amount that the residents would be paying would once more rise to that original X amount, plus what the oil companies are paying, plus what the out-of-staters would be paying and everything else. because they know that we'll pay it. They know that they can, willingly or not, they know that they can take the PFD. They know that they can do those, because the bottom line problem has not been addressed. The causation, right? The causal effect of all of this problem that we have right now in the state of Alaska and in the nation, quite honestly, is an insatiable, voracious appetite for spending. That is the problem. Yesterday, apparently, there was a motion on the floor at some point in the House, apparently, from Kevin McCabe. Willie was telling me about it. I wasn't watching yesterday, so I wasn't paying that close of attention. But apparently, he made a motion to eliminate a handful of positions that had been unfilled for like 2 years, 3 years. Would have saved $1 million. We keep hearing from the legislature. I mean, they've actually talked. They've said the cut word, and it's kind of made my heart go pity pat, pity pat. Oh my gosh, they're talking about cuts. But 6 ghost positions, essentially 6 unfilled positions that have been unfilled for more than 2 years, and it was defeated. The amendment was defeated. Why? I don't, other than we can't cut the government spend. It's anathema to what their belief system. I mean, the belief system has become all spend in government is good and holy and righteous. And any talk of reducing that spend is therefore apparently evil, blasphemous, heresy, to continue with the religious theme. I mean, that's where we're at. If they can't cut 6 positions for $1 million worth of savings in a multi-billion-dollar budget, that I don't even know. I mean, again, doomed. Frank in the chat room asks the $1 million question, or the $1 billion question. How do we change the mindset in the legislature then? And the honest answer is, folks, I know you come to this program to get your answers. You come to here to find solutions. That's what we're trying to do, right? I don't know. If you'd asked me 5 years ago or 10 years ago, I would say we can make a difference. We can change out some of those players. We can stop the business as usual. We can get some common sense in there. That's the youthful me, the naive me, who thought that's what it would take. The answer to Frank's question is, I don't know how to change the mindset in the legislature. These people are convinced, absent of all proof, absence of all connection to factual reality, they are convinced that their behavior and what they are doing is the way forward. It's the way to save us. It's the way to do it right. Even though the proof is showing, the historically and the facts of the matter are, we're worse off now than we were 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And I'm not talking about our quality of life. I mean, our quality of life is probably even better, but financially and fiscally, the state itself is in, it is an absolute disaster. Even with the cut to the PFD, we're still $400 million upside down. $400 million deficit. So they cut it from almost $2 billion to $400 million. Oh, and that doesn't count the deficit for this year, which is another $200 million. And they couldn't cut $1 million for positions that aren't even filled? I don't have an answer for you. I don't have king for a day. Sure, we can do something. If I was king for a day, we could go in there and we'd make an unholy mess, and it would take them years to unsort the mess that I could make in just a day. But absent the dictatorial powers of a god, I just don't see how you turn this ship around. And I'm not trying to be doom and gloom. I'm just saying maybe somebody else out there has got an answer. Maybe one of you has got some kind of brilliant, epiphany that will just somehow change the minds of a group of people who go down there and are convinced of their own brilliance in everything that they're doing, and that this is all going to work out. But I don't have an answer. Now, Brad's solution that a strong governor could go in there, and I agree, if we had a strong governor that was willing to say, if I only go in for one term, I only go in for one term. I mean, if that was the case, so be it. Yes, I think that would do it. But who are we going to have step up and do that? What are our options now? I mean, did you see the list of did you see the list of potential gubernatorial candidates they're talking about? I mean, even Bernadette Wilson as you know, I admire her spunk, I admire her spirit. I don't know her very well, but would she be the one to go in there and to clean house and rip tear and pull hair and threaten to veto everything and do? I mean, I don't know. But the rest of the crowd certainly is not of that ilk. You know, you're not going to get Adam Crum or Nancy Dahlstrom or Click Bishop or, Mary Peltola. Certainly they're not going to go in there and fix it. He is right that, I mean, again, the governor of the state of Alaska, like I said earlier, is one of the strongest executives in the country. But we just don't have that caliber of person waiting in the wings. We don't have somebody who's just sitting there, with a plan, waiting to make it happen. That's what we need. We need somebody who's willing to go in there and essentially, potentially commit political suicide, to stand against all comers, against all parties, to do whatever it takes to get in there and to make the difference. The state is sick. We're back to the medical analogy. The state is sick. And we can either get sicker from the cure. We have a terminal illness of stupidity. We have a terminal illness of spending problems. And yes, to cure that problem, there's going to be some pain. There are going to be citizens who feel the pinch, who get hurt. There will be people that lose their jobs. There will be people that would lose their benefit from the state, that they would not have access to the things that they have access to today. But the state could survive if somebody's willing to make the hard choices. Again, it would probably be political suicide for whoever did it. But if somebody was willing, that would be about the only way to fix this problem. And even that's not a guarantee, because remember, the governor, as strong as the governor's position is still just one of 60. And who knows, that may solidify some big pro-spend government movement out there, and they could replace big chunks of the legislature and still overturn the governor. But that's really the only potential solution at this point. Because what we've been doing is not working. What we've been doing is failing. And it's unfortunate. But I guess the rest of that's for another day. Let's continue. Up next, Quincy Azimi Tabrizi from the Americans for Prosperity is going to come in and talk with us about tax day. Then we're going to finish up with Chris Story. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We return to more right after this.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Ha, nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
All right. I guess we're going to get caught up here in the chat room real quick. And see what you got, what your answers are. Dunleavy needs to pull out the rubber mallet. Well, he needs to pull something out of someplace. Kim says crash and burn is the only answer. And I know that there's more and more people that have said that to me over the last 2 years, year and a half, 2 years, that basically just accelerate it until it, because again, that's the only answer, which is horrific because that's when the most people get hurt. If we don't fix it, the most people get hurt. But Kim might be right. He might be right. It's possible. Let's see. Randy says, Michael, we would gladly crown you king if you were to promise to give us a balanced budget. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants me as king. I would be a horrific king. I would be a benevolent dictator. That's what would happen. The legislature does not all vote in the same way, said Becky. I agree, Becky. That's the problem. Like I said, maybe a strong governor could do it, or maybe a strong governor would solidify a coalition against him towards more pro-government spending. That could be every action has at least 3 unintended consequences, and that could be one, 100%. State Senator Mike Shower, our next potential governor, said exactly, likely a one-term job to do what has to be done. Most people get two second term. Yeah, exactly. Don't hate me, Michelle. Somebody like Mike Shower could get it done. Somebody could. Mike, you've been doing this and speaking about this for 20 years. Do you think there's any hope left at all for us? I have to believe that there is hope. I have to believe that there's hope. I don't grow weary in well-doing. I don't grow weary in well-doing. That's the end. All right. Quincy Azimi Tabrizi. Boy, I hope I said that right. From Americans for Prosperity is waiting in the green room. She's eating all my donuts. What the hell? Those virtual donuts are expensive, chick. Don't eat all those. We're going to talk about the extravaganza. It's a tax day extravaganza. She's waiting in the wings. Let me go over here and test her audio real quick before we get too far along. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. How are we looking on audio?
You look good. You look good on audio, and you sound good on video. Isn't that weird? That's weird how that worked out, right? Yes. Look and sound good. You ready to dive in and do this thing?
Let's do it.
Okay. All right. I'm going to put you back in the green room. Don't eat the ones with the sprinkles. Those are my favorite. Okay. That's all I'm saying. Quincy is in the green room again. Okay. I'm not trying to be Downer Debbie here. King Dukes. Yes. You would not like that. I'm just telling you, I'm warning you right now. You would not like that. As a state, we need to grow up and take responsibility for our own governance. I think as a people, as a nation, we need to take responsibility for it. We have passed that off to our betters, right? Our leaders, we've done that for so long. We just have no idea how any of that stuff works anymore. I mean, we don't even know. We're so out of touch. They're spending billions and trillions of dollars that we just don't, and then we don't even, and then when we get something like Doge or any kind of suggestions of cut, I mean, you got Doge on the one hand, on the other hand, you've got, we'd like to cut 6 positions that haven't been filled for 2 years and it's only $1 million, and they all freak out. We're also out of touch with what's going on. I mean, not all of us. We're kind of connected, but the vast majority of people are so out of touch, they have no idea. No idea. Okay. Here we go. We're jumping back into it. 10 seconds out. Going to be joined by Quincy here in just a second. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Like, share, subscribe, ring the bell, do all that YouTube-y stuff. Let's get to it. You ready? Here we go.
Public enema number 1. Oh, wait, sorry. Public enemy number 1, which makes more sense. On the other hand, he's a little bit of a pain in the Michael Duke Show.
I am a pain in the something. And proud of it, my friends. Proud of it. Just call me your mental suppository. Good morning, my friends. Welcome back to the program, Hour 2 of the Big Radio Show for Tuesday. And we're ready to jump into it. Joining me this morning to discuss tax day. Yes, tax day. Aren't you happy that today's the day? Is Quincy Azimi Tabrizi. Did I say that right? I hope I said it right.
You got it first try. I'm impressed.
That's a hard one. I mean, it's just like, I'm treading on dangerous ground there. You asked me to pronounce a name that I am not familiar with.
Yeah.
Quincy.
And you know how offended I can get.
I know, really. You don't want to do that. Quincy is with Americans for Prosperity. She's here to talk with us about tax day and also their tax day extravaganza egg. It's they're giving away eggs. They're I mean, that's like gold around here, man. I went and bought two cartons of eggs the other day and it was a $20 bill. I was like, wow. Quincy, so Quincy, what's going on with tax day, which of course is our favorite, not to be confused with Freedom Day, which is the day where you make enough money to pay your taxes, which is they're getting closer and closer. It's kind of scary. But tell us about Americans for Prosperity and what's going on for tax day and your extravaganza.
Well, Michael, I appreciate you having us on today, especially on the most taxing day of the year. So wish you all survival as you hurry and file those last minute returns. So we will be, if talking to my Anchorage folks and people outside, we'll be at Natural Pantry at 2 p.m. today, giving out a dozen eggs to the first 100 people who stop by. And I think it'll be fun to engage with the community. Egg prices are high right now, so a little bit of relief on a difficult day for many. But there's an important message behind it that has to do with some of the things that Trump is leading out on the federal level.
All right. Well, we've been watching. I have been excited to see that the prices have been dropping a little. I'm sorry. I just yoke it up for now. Okay, it'll be fine later. We'll get to we'll beat this one through and scramble it up. We're excited to see some of those prices are dropping, and some of the other things. I mean, I'm not expecting miracles. I'm expecting with tariffs and everything else, it's going to be a little bit of a tougher time. But again, sometimes the medicine makes you feel a little queasy, but it's what's there to help fix it when it's all said and done. So what are the things that AFP is excited about for what's going on?
Well, we're really excited about prioritizing jobs in Alaska and the United States. I think Trump has really let out on bringing jobs back. And part of that means that we need to extend the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. So if the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was put into place 2017, it needs to be extended this year. Otherwise, the average Alaskan's tax bill will go up $2,305. So we'll see that increase real quick if Congress doesn't act.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we know that we've got a finite window of time. We talked about this with Nick Begich shortly after he took office, that, we've got a finite window here for Trump to make the mess that he's going to make, and then to have Congress codify it so that it can't be reversed. So we quit playing this game of wiffle ball with various presidents countermanding each other's executive orders and being, we're the tug of war, we're the rope in the middle between the tug of war. We need to have that happen. We need congressional help to make sure that gets locked in after we've, done the clean out and swept out the barn to make sure that things stay nice and neat.
Absolutely. I think, I don't envy the Speaker of the House or the President of the Senate right now. That's a lot of people to be able to coalesce behind one topic. But I think one thing that I would hope Republicans can agree on is tax cuts, relief for Alaska families, and families all over the nation.
So explain to me how the Tax and Jobs Act, explain to me exactly, talk to me like I'm 5. What exactly does it do, and what are the benefits of it, and how do we need to pump this up?
Great. So I would encourage everybody to visit protectprosperity.com. It's got a lot of details in it. And one of my favorite things about the website, whenever I see national data, I go, okay, Alaska's its own thing. How does this apply? So you can scroll down a little bit and click on Alaska, and it'll show you exactly how it affects the thousands of jobs we have in our state. So the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act affects both like mom and pop businesses and middle-class Americans. And so an extension for this helps our businesses and helps our own paychecks. So double whammy. And also on the Protect Prosperity website, you can fill out the form and send a letter right to Congress saying that you support Trump's Tax Cuts and Jobs Act.
Now, AFP has been doing yeoman's work in the state, kind of pushing for these kind of prosperity type initiatives and legislation and initiatives around the state. And are you hoping to get more involvement with this extravaganza that you're doing today, which, by the way, again, is at Natural Pantry there in Midtown, starting at, what is it, 2 p.m.?
2 p.m.
2 p.m.
Yes, sir.
All right. So file your taxes and then go get some free eggs. What are you hoping to do as you go in there and engage with people at the pantry today?
Well, we go door to door and we talk to voters every day, and we're hearing that the economy is still top of mind. I think the federal government has done a lot to roll back some of Biden's really disastrous decisions for this state, like, for example, opening up our energy and those jobs. But there is absolutely still work to be done. And you're right, like, we're feeling the effects. It's going to hurt for a little while longer while the ship rights itself. So talking to people, we can pass off a dozen eggs and we can complain about taxes together and talk about electing the right people, talking about the right things, sharing with your neighbors about economic freedom and keeping more of what you earn.
You were sitting in the green room while I was ranting about not having an idea about how to fix, things in the state. Mm-hmm. Is that what it's going to take? I mean, can we just change those players out? Because we have a thing called the Charter of Changes, and number one is to change the players. And we've changed out a bunch of players at the Alaska level, but yet we still seem to get the same thing, Quincy. I mean, what's the answer in your mind? I mean, speaking for yourself, I'm not trying to put you guys on the spot, but I mean, what I'm truthfully looking for, because I've been doing the same thing for 25 years, and you know the definition of insanity, right? I've been doing the same thing for 25 years, and I still feel like I'm beating my face against the pavement every day, saying the same things, talking about the same things, and looking at it and going, what I said was going to happen is happening. I told you so, but I'm feeling the pain too. So what is the biggest solution here in the state of Alaska and in the country?
Well, I think one of my biggest concerns is that we have a federal government who is willing to open up business in Alaska, and I am concerned about leadership in our state legislature being willing to do the same thing. So we were handed an opportunity, and to not take advantage of that, I think will have ramifications for decades to come for Alaskans. And I was at a barbecue the other day with several other young couples, and 5 out of the 6 young couples are planning on leaving the state in the next year. And that type of thing is heartbreaking. Like, we want Alaska to be a great place to live for all ages. And so how do we do that? I think it starts with jobs. And that starts with electing the right people.
Well, I think it starts with jobs and opportunity for entrepreneurship, which includes
Entrepreneurship.
yeah, removing regulations and hurdles and stumbles. I mean, we saw the numbers that came out from the Alaska Department of Labor, which basically said that the out-migration, we actually had an influx, a plus migration in the over 60 crowd, the retired, the people with money. But the largest demographic of people who are moving out are working age Alaskan, those young couples that you were just talking about. They're the ones that are moving out because they either don't see the opportunity or don't see the future in the state of Alaska, especially with what we've got going on in state spending right now. They're deathly afraid that there will be more spending and more taxes and more of everything, more of the big government mentality. And I think that's what's really killing the state. We've become a dependency state. We've become a welfare state. And that's shattering for somebody who was born. I'm third generation Alaskan. My grandmother was born up north of Fairbanks, right? I mean, I'm proud of this state. I'm proud of the pioneering spirit. And it seems like we've lost that. We've now, we're all happy to suckle on the teat of the federal government and of the state government, and whatever they give us must be okay. And so we've kind of lost that pioneering spirit.
Yeah, I think, I mean, you're absolutely right that once government expands, it is incredibly difficult to roll back. Something that I think Elon Musk knows very well. There's the Alaska Doge. I excited to see what they bring forward. And then I think that you're right, that Governor Dunleavy has a lot of executive power to be able to take a look at regulations and agencies. So I think, there's possibilities now, even. I don't know if we have to wait until the next election to be able to drive awareness and change some of these things.
Well, like I said, the governor of the state of Alaska is inordinately powerful. I mean, it is probably the most powerful executive position of all 50 states. There's nothing stopping the governor from taking a page out of Trump's book and doing a lot of things executively. It may be challenged later. It may be, there may be questions, but he could take the bull by the horns and reach in there and do it. I mean, he's 12 months out of the year. He's getting paid to do all that stuff. The legislature's only in session for 120 days. He could do some real good things and really upset the apple cart as far as that goes. But again, we need a governor who is willing to do that. And again, potentially commit political suicide is what I said earlier, because you might just be a one-term governor, but amazingly what you could get done potentially in one term if you had the political willpower to do it.
Yeah, I've got a lot of hope for 2026. But I mean, one step at a time, right? Like, I appreciate talking to you and seeing these comments, because I know that good people are working on this and that want prosperity for Alaska.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So tell us about, again, one more time. It is the Americans for Prosperity, the tax day extravaganza. You guys should get very excited about it because they're going to be giving away eggs. Natural Pantry downtown. Sorry, I cracked myself up. It is the Natural Pantry, Midtown Anchorage, today, 2 to 4. You're going to be there. You're going to be shaking hands and kissing babies and doing all that stuff.
Yep, I'll be hustling eggs out there. So please stop by. We'll hand you a dozen eggs. We'll complain about taxes together, and hopefully make your tax day a little bit more survivable.
Yeah, well, we hope so. If we make it through, I got mine in yesterday, right under the wire. Thank you. It was just like one of those things. Anyway, Quincy Azimi Tabrizi, Americans for Prosperity, Alaska. Thank you for coming on board. I hope you have a good turnout today. Again, 2 to 4 p.m. at the Natural Pantry in Midtown. Get yourself some free eggs, and then you could scramble them up and color them up or do whatever you want to do. Quincy, thank you for coming on board and joining us today. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Thanks, Michael.
All right. Don't go anywhere, Quincy. I want to talk to you for a second. Just you, me, and 70 of our closest friends on the internet. We're going to have a private conversation. Hold the line. We're going to be back with more of the Michael Duke Show. Chris Story is up next. Whew. We need his daily or his weekly dose of positivity. That's what we need. Back with more right after this.
Your mental suppository. The Michael Duke Show.
Okay, Quincy is in the chat room. And as I said, it's just you, me, and 70 of our closest friends on the internet. So just between us girlfriends here. Anything else? What else is happening with AFP? What are you guys doing? I mean, we're doing the tax day thing. Any other big events coming on? I'd like to know what's happening. Keep me in the loop here.
Oh yeah, well, I'd love to let you know about we're doing a movie night, pizza night, just with just bringing the community together of like-minded people to talk about what we can do for the state. But we're focused a lot on the state legislature, mainly because the focus has to be there. They're keeping us very busy. And one of the things that we saw come out of the legislature this last week was their education funding bill that the governor had stated before the bill even got taken a vote on that he was going to veto it. So the Democrat leadership pushed through a bill that they knew was destined to fail. And so in education, we know our schools are struggling. And so this bill wasn't about helping our kids. It was performative politics. So that's something that we're definitely focusing on. And we want to make sure the public knows about this too.
Well, we know it's political theater, right? We know it's all kabuki. This is a way for them to later on go out and say tall man bad, right? That we did our part, the governor, it's his fault, or then if somebody doesn't vote to override it, well, we did our part, but these guys, they knew it was going to happen. I mean, it won't be brought up in any news story that the governor, the governor warned them, don't do this. I'll smack your hand. Don't do it. I'll smack your hand. And yet they're like, it's his fault. He smacked my hand, right? Because that's how they do it. This is the game that they're playing. It's the same thing with the whole Friday night, late night, after dark, everybody leaves. And we said we weren't going to do it till Monday, but now we're going to do it, right? It's the same kind of thing. It's the same kind of BS that we see every time from the same group of people. And part of the problem is, I mean, I like AFP because it's Americans for Prosperity. It's not a specific party because let's face it, both parties are the problem right now in the state of Alaska. It was under Republicans that we spent $18 billion out of our CBR and expanded the size and scope of government. And we've still got some of them critters in there that are doing the same thing, protecting the same thing. We just need more smaller government people. That's what leads to prosperity, is getting government out of the way. Am I wrong?
Oh, you're absolutely right. I think Miguel made a good comment in the chat. Like the money that was, even if the bill by some miracle were to pass, that money will never make it to our kids. There's no guarantees that the school districts will put the money into classrooms.
No.
So I mean that's example A of all of government, I think.
Yeah. No, look, it's beer pong and leg wrestling. That's what it's all about right now in the legislature. We got to make sure that it all happens down there. All right, Quincy Azimi Tabrizi, Americans for Prosperity, Alaska. Again, if you're in the Anchorage area, 2 to 4 today, go by and get your free eggs. First 100 people go by there, they get a free. Tell me it's a 24-pack of eggs. No, tell me it's 18. Well, is it
I wouldn't. Our budget would break 24 eggs. No, dozen eggs.
Yeah.
First 100 people.
I used to buy eggs by the 60-pack, 5 dozen eggs, when they were like $12 for, and now it's like $23, $22 for, I'm just like, oh, it's so crazy. Anyway, Quincy, thank you for coming on board. Keep the number on speed dial. You guys get something else you got coming on, I'd love to have you back on to talk about it. Thank you for being part of it today.
Thank you for having me. And wishing you survival tax day.
My head doesn't explode. I've just got to find that other roll of duct tape to keep the eyeballs from the blood shooting out of my eye sockets. Thank you so much for coming on board. I appreciate it. Appreciate you being here. All right. Quincy Azimi Tabrizi. We're just going to call her Quincy AT because, I keep being afraid that I'm going to say it wrong. All right. We're going to jump into this here. We're about a minute and a half out. I think Chris Story's on the line. If the phone worked, Chris Story. Are you there, buddy? Can you hear me? No, of course you can't hear me. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, no, I could hear you just fine.
You could hear you just fine, but I couldn't hear you. I'm calling you back because this stupid phone. Stupid. Let's try this again. See if, hey, there it went. Okay. All right.
Did it work?
It worked. Okay. You could hear me, but I couldn't hear you. That's always the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Although, is it really a problem if you can hear me, but I can't hear you? Is that really a problem?
No. It's like old radio.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Okay. We're 38 seconds away. What's the puff for today? What's the topic?
The frequency of fulfillment.
The frequency of fulfillment. Okay, got it. We're gonna jump back into that here. I'm gonna put Chris back on hold. The frequency of fulfillment. Yeah, I know. He slacked off last week, Melissa. Melissa says it right here, Chris. Today better be twice as good since you ditched us last week. That's what she said. That's right. You ditched us last week. Chris Story, the man from Homer. Ask Chris if he'd be interested in becoming a school board member.
The Michael Duke Show. Seriously humorous with a pinch of intellect. Sorry. That is humorous. Here's Michael Dukes.
All right. You guys ready for this thing? This thing on? Are you ready? Are you ready, y'all? Ready? All right, let's get to it. Chris Story, the man from Homer. He joins us every week. Well, not every week. Last week, we got the fickle finger. Or was it the middle finger? We got the finger last week as he kind of shoved us off and said, sorry, I can't be bothered to come on your little radio show because, I'm traveling and just me and the puppies and mom. We're just traveling. Anyway, Chris Story comes on every now and then to share with us his wit, his witticism, and his sage advice and wisdom as the guru of positivity from the cosmic hamlet by the sea. Chris Story. Hello, my friend. How are you?
Good morning, Michael. I'm on top of the world. Last week I was at a different location. Thank you for highlighting that. But I missed you more than you missed me. Let's put it that way.
That's probably true. I mean, yeah, absolutely. You were very well missed. Today, Chris, we need to talk. This is the talk we're about to have on the frequency of fulfillment. I'm interested to hear what you have to say. Let's hit me with it. What are we talking about?
Well, so last week my mind was wandering a little bit. I had all the not doing your little program here. I had a lot more free time to think and just sort of be myself without fear of retribution or reprisal from your great intellect. And so absent that, nature abhors a vacuum. I wrote a short story and I called it The Midnight Line. And it was about a guy that gets on a train, kind of a little despondent, and he meets one of my reoccurring characters named Oscar, and Oscar talks with him through their trip together on that railroad. And what came from that little short story I wrote is now an outline for an actual book that I'm 2 chapters into writing. But more importantly, it was this little nugget of an idea that Oscar shared with Miles, this character, and it was called the frequency of fulfillment. The difference between what you want in life and what you get is the gulf between your wants or desires and what you expect. And when you're tuned and you have a frequency where those two things match, where you say what it is you say you want out of life, you also expect to get or accomplish or become, that is the frequency of fulfillment. When you got that dialed just right, that's when you not only have things in life you want, but you actually feel harmonious. You feel that sense of fulfillment. It's way more than a collection of deeds to properties or dollars in an account or stock options or what have you. That frequency of fulfillment, because how many people have you heard about, read about, or talked to or listened to describe having sold a business for 9 figures, whatever. And this is it. What now what? Or you come back from landing and walking upon the moon to come back to Earth and go, okay, well, but now what? What else is there for me to do or
Right.
accomplish or become? And so that's the frequency of fulfillment. When what you want and what you desire matches your expectations, and you have faith, and you can project yourself forward into the life you choose based on that alignment. And that, I think, failure is often described as having missed an opportunity or something that went wrong, when in truth, I think the real failure in life is where we have that misalignment between our wants and our expectations, our desires, and the expected outcomes that we truly have faith in. Like, pretty sure this isn't going to work. And then guess what? It didn't. There you go. You have your cognitive bias in place. You're set to go. You're golden.
So how do we increase the frequency of fulfillment, or how do we even read it? How do we know that it's happening? How do we control it? I'm a control freak.
Well,
How do we control it?
Yeah, for a long time, I've been talking about on my show about be careful about what it is you say you want, because your subconscious is listening. So I think it starts with, what do you really want? Dialing into your own goals and expectations and listening to yourself for a minute. Like, what do you really want? Are you sure you want what you say you want? We often are, I think, caught up in living the expectations of other people. We're often, and again, well-intentioned people that have handed you a reputation or handed you something to live up to, and you're walking that line as though it was your own desire, but truthfully, it's somebody else's expectation of you or desire for your life, and you're living it out because, well, you wanted to, live up to that expectation. But then it's a little bit like my friend Mark Halpin says, it's too late in the dance to call her ugly. You can't quit now. I got 20 years into this thing. I met a guy while we were out traveling, and he's in a particular business for the last 25 years. And I said, do you still enjoy it? Do you really like it? And there was a look that came over his face that actually spoke something different than what he said. And Tiffany and I both noticed it. He said, "Oh yes." And yes, oh yes, a lot of challenges, still a lot of challenges. But the look on his face told us, "Oh my God, I'd like to claw my eyes out. There's nothing else I can do at this point. It's too late in the dance to call her ugly."
I mean, we all get stuck in that, right? The sunk cost fallacy, right? Which is, we've invested so much in it. We've invested X number of years of our lives into this, and it's just that it'd be a waste to invest it again. The sunk cost, but you look at the history of success stories, and a lot of times it's people who cast off the shackles of expectations, who did something for years, and people would say, "Oh, he would," and then all of a sudden they completely switch gears and they go do something completely different, completely. And I always find it interesting when somebody said, "Yeah, I was a this or that, or I was a dentist, I was a lawyer, but now I'm doing this. I'm nurturing koalas in the wilderness or something." And you're like, wow, that was a total. I did not expect that at all. But we get stuck into that sunk cost fallacy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the misalignment between either other people's expectations for you and what you actually want, where those two things are misaligned, what your life you're living versus the one you would like to live, that misalignment, or even just more simply put within your own power, is what you want versus what you expect. And the truth of it is, you don't get what you want in life, you get what you expect. Chester Carras said of negotiating, you don't get what you want in life, you get what you negotiate for. And I think it's a similar corollary here, that what you expect is actually what's going to show up. Rarely are you surprised. Usually it's like, "Oh yeah, I expected this to work," or "I expected this not to work." So do you have an alignment? And then when you do, that's my concept of just like tuning into the radio dial at the right frequency. When you get to the frequency of fulfillment, you have an alignment between desire and what you truly believe is possible, and have faith in it and expect it. So you don't get what you want, you get what you expect.
Okay, so to have a frequency of fulfillment, and we're about 3.5 minutes here, we're talking with Chris Story, by the way, the man from Homer, in case you didn't know. Come on, it's Tuesday, it's him. So to have that frequency of fulfillment, that means we must have expectations. We must build expectations, right? I mean, this should be part of our daily self-analysis and our goal setting, is we should have those otherwise we just, whatever comes.
I think we've got them, whether we recognize it or not, whether we sit and write it down or have a goal or a journal, written down expectations. We have expectations. Being conscious of what it is that you want, or at least say you want, and then aligning it with what you expect. So if you want to become this person or that, you want to get healthy, you want to have more wealth or prosperity, you want to have, the difference between the two is, of course, prosperity is being the amount of wealth you have going forward without working or trading time for it, as Buckminster Fuller said. But you just align those things and you're going to be on the right track. And I think you'll feel a sense of fulfillment, even if you're miles from the destination, if you're light years from the destination. It doesn't matter, so long as what you want and what you expect are in harmony. And then suddenly you feel a sense of fulfillment, even if you're at the nascent, beginnings of something that might take you 10 years to accomplish, do, or become. It's fine. You will feel a sense of fulfillment long before you have the outcome that you want and expect. So it isn't even about the outcome. It's like we've talked about many times here, you and I, about like, it's not the destination, it's the journey, and all the bumper sticker things you can think of are so true, because cliches are true in a lot of sense because they're true. They ring true to you. So if this rings true at all, think about tuning in to the frequency of what it is that will fulfill you. What do you want? And you better expect to get it, or you're not going to. You can surprise yourself once in a while.
Right.
Like I say, nature's little aberrations. It's like, radio hosts, things like that. There's little weird oddities in life that sometimes it happens, but the reality is not very often.
Well, and this goes back to, again, the manifesting, right? And understanding, and to know what your destination is. You can journey. You could be a wandering generality, right? You can wander around out there and things will happen, good things, sometimes bad things. But if you have a destination in mind, it definitely helps with that journey. 1 minute.
And then behave differently. So walk, talk, and think. I mean, thinking is the basis and the blueprint for all that's going to happen to you in your life. So if you walk and talk and think like the life you want is already on its way, even if it's not here yet, that is the frequency of fulfillment, and you will enjoy every step of that journey. That's a guarantee.
All right. Chris Story, you can find him at ilovehomeralaska.com. That's where you can find all his books, his recordings, his writings, his podcasts, his everything. His everything. That's where everything is. Go over there and check it out. He's got new books coming out as well. I'm looking forward to hearing more about it. Chris Story, thank you, my friend. As always, you were a breath of fresh air in an otherwise stale environment of this show. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you, Michael.
Appreciate it. All right, tomorrow, Mike Shower's going to join us. Whoa, that'll be fun. Trying to get Will Stapp on in hour one. We'll see what happens with that. We appreciate you guys. We love you guys. Thanks for coming in. Be kind, love one another, and live well. The Michael Duke Show. All right. Well, I think that kind of wraps the whole thing up neatly in a bow. Although I'm a little disappointed, Rob left me apparently right when I got really good. I said, Chris gives sage advice, and he says, does he have time to give with that sage? And I said, only when it's the season for that. And he sprinkles on some wisdom, and then he at least gives us a fair shake. And then Jeannie said, that's punny. And I said, well, it's 2/3 of a pun, PU. And then I asked Rob, because he didn't respond, is that too spicy for you? And apparently he got a little salty and left. That's my pun trivia for today. All right, folks, we're out of time. We'll see. I entertain myself. We'll be back tomorrow.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.